Lovely. Thank you. Hello and welcome. I'm Emily Glover. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Director of Patient Services for Planned Parenthood of Illinois. I want to thank the City Council for voting to update the Bodily Autonomy Ordinance. As one of the largest providers of reproductive and gender-affirming care in Chicago, Planned Parenthood of Illinois is grateful for the city's efforts to end discrimination and to strengthen protections for everyone seeking and providing health care in the city of Chicago. At Planned Parenthood, we believe that every person has the fundamental right to make their own reproductive and sexual health care decisions without fear of intimidation, harassment, or being denied care. In a time when reproductive rights and access to life-saving health care is under attack, this ordinance goes beyond basic protections and condemns the actions of other states that have enacted devastating laws banning abortion and gender-affirming care. By prohibiting the use of resources to enforce these laws or participate in actions designed to impose civil or criminal penalties, the City of Chicago is showing that everyone is welcome here. This message is crucial because every state surrounding Illinois now has extreme anti-abortion laws. Since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June, PPIL and other providers have cared for a surge of patients seeking health care in Illinois. Attacks on gender-affirming care are just as dangerous as the overturning of Roe because they too strip individuals of the right to make their own health care decisions and to live their lives authentically. And it's not just patients traveling to us. It's healthcare providers and other professionals who are also making the trip to Illinois and to Chicago to continue to serve patients. PPIL has welcomed physicians and nurses, and medical assistants from many other states, and this ordinance protects all of these caregivers who are passionate providers of reproductive and gender-affirming care. So as a Planned Parenthood employee and as a Chicago resident, I say thank you, many thanks, to Chicago's City Council for being leaders in protecting freedom of choice and self-determination for our patients and for our staff. And so now it's my honor to introduce Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we've got a lot to cover today, so I want to make sure that we give everybody their due. We're here to highlight the efforts taken earlier today on the City Council's meeting to make our city safe and sustainable. And joining me in this effort, you heard from Emily Glover from Planned Parenthood. I'm also honored to have Illinois State Representative Kelly Cassidy, Alderman Scott Wagasback, Chicago Commission on Human Relations, Commissioner Nancy Andrade, Chicago Department of Transportation, Commissioner Gia Biaggi, Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, Commissioner Ken Meyer, and the many conservation, abortion, and transportation advocates joining us here today. First and foremost, I'm pleased to share that, as you heard earlier today, the City Council passed a bodily autonomy for all ordinance. This is memorializing in the municipal code the executive order that I signed earlier this year. This effort supplements the ordinance that was also passed in September, which prohibits city departments and agencies from participating in any proceeding or investigation against individuals seeking reproductive or gender-affirming care in Chicago. Bottom line is this is going to be a city that stands for justice for all. We will not participate in the efforts of some other states and cities to try to criminalize those who come to Chicago to get the kind of gender-affirming and reproductive health care that they have a right to. In Chicago, all are welcome, all will be protected, and now it's codified into law. We will also expand these protections in the workplace by preventing employers from retaliating against workers who are either seeking reproductive or gender-affirming care or supporting their family member seeking such care. Employers will not be able to require workers to sign documents to seek or deny theirs or their family members' right to make their own health care decisions. This is sacrosanct. And nor will they have access to information about any such decisions unless they receive informed, affirmative, and written consent from the worker. The Bodily Autonomy for All ordinance thus reaffirms our citywide belief that decisions related to reproductive and gender-affirming care are meant to be discussed between an individual and their doctor, pure and simple. No landlord or employer should be able to intervene, retaliate, or discriminate against a person for exercising a fundamental right to bodily autonomy. I'm proud to have worked with many aldermen, including Rosanna Rodriguez-Sanchez, Maria Haddon, Carlos Ramirez-Rosa, and Matt Martin to provide another piece of legislation that protects patients from discrimination and, again, makes us a beacon in the Midwest and across the country for bodily autonomy. I want to congratulate and thank Representative Cassidy for her leadership in Springfield to further expand protections for individuals and providers throughout Illinois. Not easy, but Kelly Cassidy is somebody who gets stuff done. So thank you, ma'am, for all of your hard work. Thank you for your leadership and making sure that we expanded the opportunities and protections in Illinois. We will all be the beneficiaries of your work. So as we approach the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that though this decision was a historic one, it also left many individuals behind. Navigating in this post-op world, we must ensure we correct the mistakes of the past by fighting to protect the rights of all of our people. And I'm dedicated to this mission as Chicago's mayor, and I'm deeply grateful to the individuals in this room, across our city and across our state, who are helping to make it a reality. And I want to particularly thank all of the clinicians and providers who have really been under incredible duress since the Dobbs decision was affirmed by the appellate court back earlier last year. We've seen a stream of people come to Chicago, which has meant that we've had to step up in a meaningful way to help provide additional financial support, which we did with $500,000 right away. And then we, in the budget that was passed by City Council, added another $3 million on top of the floor that we typically give to these providers. But make no mistake about it, they are doing incredibly important work, and we have to thank them for their selflessness in the face of so many headwinds against women and others seeking to exercise their rights to bodily autonomy. I want to next talk about our new Urban Forestry Advisory Board. These dedicated individuals are well-respected, technical and community tree experts who are known for their work throughout Chicagoland and have demonstrated an unwavering commitment to support the city in sustaining a healthy and thriving tree canopy. You've heard me talk about this many times. First of all, it's important that we are well on our way to meeting our commitment for 75,000 trees. We exceeded our 15,000 tree planting goal from last year. But we want to engage more of the community members in this conversation about why replacing our and renewing our tree canopy is so important. So we have demonstrated an unwavering commitment to support the city in sustaining a healthy and thriving tree canopy. These 6 new appointees are Rolando Favela, a dedicated tree champion, an environmental professional, and committed tree ambassador representing the Southwest Side. Daniela Pereira, Vice President of Conservation at Open Lands. Nori Madonna, Director of Community Development for Blacks and Green. Cindy Schwab, a dedicated industry leader and arborist working on diversity, equity, and inclusion and other workforce initiatives. And Jim Semelka, former president of the Illinois Arborists Association and regional tree expert. And Jess Vogel, an academic arborist from DePaul University. I hope that you can see from the short bios of each of these folks, they know what they're doing. They are dedicated to trees and making sure that our tree canopy as strong as possible, and we are going to be the better for their involvement and their dedication. I want to congratulate each of these appointees for this exciting new opportunity and thank them ahead of time for their service. We are also extremely proud of the work that we've done in the last year to reignite our commitment to this important work. We've celebrated many successes, including committing $46 million to trees through the Chicago Recovery Plan. We're also eliminating the 3-year backlog of 311 tree requests and facilitating the planting of 18,000 trees throughout our city with an intentional focus on communities where trees are needed the most through our newly launched Our Roots Chicago initiatives. None of this would have been possible without our deeply robust tree stewardship community. They are vocal, they are active and enthusiastic, which has been willing to volunteer their time, organizing skills, and more to support our ambitious goal of equitably planting 75,000 trees over the next 5 years, as well as ensure trees that are already in the ground are able to thrive well into the future. I'm thrilled to expand our tree canopy work by collaborating with this new Urban Forestry Advisory Board. Another item that I want to highlight from today's City Council is the introduction of the Smart Streets Pilot Ordinance, which will help improve safety, enhance protections for pedestrians and bicyclists, and speed up public transportation. Once passed, this ordinance would establish two pilots downtown that use existing infrastructure and new technology to enforce parking violations such as cars parked in bike lanes, bus lanes, crosswalks, and more, and enable a camera enforcement for parking in commercial loading zones. These two pilots aim to encourage better behavior behind the vehicle, and that's really what we're fundamentally about. We want to change driver behavior to make sure that our streets are safer. I want to thank Alderman Hopkins, Laspada, Riley, and Vasquez for their co-sponsorship of this ordinance. I also want to thank Commissioner Biaggi and her team and our transportation advocates who have worked hard to make an initiative like this possible. We urge City Council to pass this important this resource will soon be available to them. Now, it's now my honor to welcome my friend, fearless champion, State Representative Kelly Cassidy, to say a few words. Kelly.
Let me start by thanking you for the trees. As someone whose neighborhood was impacted by the Rogers Park tornado, the path of the tornado looked like the MapQuest directions from the airport to my house. All of those trees have been replaced. We had a massive old canopy, and the character of the neighborhood changed dramatically, and I'm thrilled to see that there are no more holes in the ground, so thank you for that. But that's not why I'm here. When the leak of the Dobbs decision came out, we were at a press conference together at Planned Parenthood, and I tossed down a challenge to every pro-choice politician in our state to get creative and think of ways that we can provide the services and supports to the patients and providers and families that need it in light of these attacks on bodily autonomy. And it wasn't 24 hours later that I was back here where you were announcing that first investment in a fund to facilitate access. So thank you for taking up the challenge and for continuing to, and to the alders who were part of today's ordinance and the prior ordinance. Thank you to them as well. We have to continue to be creative because our enemies are being creative. I've joked that there's an equal and opposite Kelly in legislatures all over the country, and they're coming into session now, and they're going to be bringing new attacks. When we passed the Patient and Provider Protection Ordinance Act last week at the state level, providing these protections, we were explicit in our belief that reproductive health care and gender-affirming care are health care, and they both are worthy of protection. We are watching these attacks escalate around the country, whether we are talking about people going after families who access gender-affirming care for their kids, picketing a drag brunch, breaking a window at a gay-owned bar in my neighborhood, or throwing a Molotov cocktail into a Planned Parenthood in Peoria. Our enemies are emboldened, and they are taking action. And so we have to continue to be creative and make sure that we, as leaders, as government, are doing everything in our power to put ourselves between those who would attack those most vulnerable and the folks that we have been elected to protect. So I thank you for this. We're not done yet. As I said, those attacks are going to keep coming, and we're going to keep coming back for more. So thank you, Mayor and City Council, for your actions today. And now I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Biaggi.
Thank you. I don't think that was applause for me. I think it's for,
no, it totally was.
Thank you.
You should ride your bike everywhere.
It is really exciting to be here today for what you just heard. Went to City Council and what I'm here to talk about. And first off, thank you, Mayor, for your support on all things to make our transportation system the best that it can possibly be, making it safe and accessible for everyone. So I'm here to talk about the Smart Streets pilot ordinance that was introduced today. Thank you also to Alderman Hopkins, Laspada, Martin, Riley, and Vasquez for their co-sponsorship. This ordinance is an important step toward making our transportation system safer, smarter, and more efficient. And it will establish 2 pilots in downtown that will improve traffic safety and create more efficient and reliable transit service. So this first pilot would authorize the city to ticket registered vehicle owners by mail for various parking infractions, the things you're not supposed to do anyway, including parking in bike lanes, do not park in bike lanes, parking in bus lanes, do not park in bus lanes, crosswalks, bus stops, all of those places do not park, and this will help us guide your behavior toward not parking there. It'll discourage drivers from illegally parking in places that put our most vulnerable users at risk, folks on bikes, folks walking, folks in wheelchairs. These are the points of vulnerability, and so we're doing everything we can to make it safe. The pilot will also promote reliable and accessible bus service. That is a foundation of a great bus system by deterring parking in bus-only lanes or at designated bus stops. One driver illegally parked in a dedicated bus lane creates slowdowns for the passengers on the bus who are trying to get where they need to go, for the folks who are waiting for the bus who'd like to get on it, for the cars behind that bus trying to get through, trying to get around that bus. This creates longer wait times and makes bus trips longer and less predictable. So we've been working closely with the CTA on expanding our network of bus-only lanes, and this ordinance will help maintain the integrity of those bus lanes. Okay, that's pilot number 1. Pilot number 2 will enable camera enforcement for parking in commercial loading zones, and it will facilitate more efficient driver payment. So this will help prevent that double parking. It'll decrease vehicle idling, which is also part of reducing our emissions overall as a city, and create a more efficient system for payment and drop-offs for commercial drivers. So these pilots, they'll operate for 2 years within the boundaries of what we're calling downtown, which is essentially Lake Michigan, west to Ashland, north to North Avenue, and south to Roosevelt Road. And through this program, we'll develop best practices. Where's the best place to position these? Is it working? We'll collect a lot of data to better understand our streets. So this pilot is coming, as you heard from the mayor, at a critical time. Nationally and here in Chicago, traffic fatalities have risen at an alarming rate since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are a range of factors, and we've talked about this quite a bit, whether it's vehicle design, vehicles that are designed bigger than ever, whether it's driver behavior, which is absolutely critical to how we operate on our streets and whether they're safe, and legacy designs of streets and roadways. And then we are taking that on every single day. So it's critically important that we don't leave any tools on the table, any tools in the toolbox. We need them all at our use to keep our streets safe. So this ordinance builds on actions by the Mayor Lightfoot administration to make Chicago's streets safer through infrastructure, through investments and design. Last year, we implemented over 400 individual pedestrian safety projects at intersections all over the city. These are what we call bump outs and curb extensions and refuge islands. So we are doing our part to make sure that we design our streets for safety. And we've continued to expand and improve our bikeway network. We've added more than 40 miles last year and 40 plus the year before. Since Mayor Lightfoot has taken office, we've added 120 miles of bikeway infrastructure in our city. And we are turning all the plastic protected bike lanes into concrete protected. And that will be done by the end of this year. So this is the time, everything on the table. And then one thing I'll add is yesterday we had an announcement of a new agreement between the city, Chicago Department of Transportation and the Illinois Department of Transportation, CDOT and IDOT, to streamline the process of delivering safety measures on state routes in the city of Chicago. This is a landmark agreement. This is a framework for fast, safe designs on those state routes, which are your major arterials where you see most of your traffic fatalities and serious injuries. This is just the latest example of another whole-of-government approach to making our city safe for everyone. So another tool to create safer streets that discourage dangerous driving, we are lastly joining other cities that are working and testing these kinds of things, whether it's New York, Seattle, San Francisco, and DC. This is where it's headed in terms of making our streets safe. And I'm so grateful for the partnership of Mayor Lightfoot and friends like the Active Transportation Alliance who have been really important advocates for these kinds of programs. Thank you. And next, I'll introduce Alderman Wagsback from the 32nd Ward.
Thank you, Commissioner. And it's great to hear all those things that are happening. I think some of those issues we've been talking about for well over a decade, like the IDOT and CDOT cooperation. So it's great to see this administration actually move forward on that in conjunction with the state. I'm actually here to support all these issues, EAP and bodily autonomy ordinance, and all the efforts by people here to make sure that we could get these things done. And as well as all your staff out here who, like Angela, who's worked on the Urban Forestry Advisory Board, and of course all the lawyers who have to make sure that we write the stuff the right way. But I want to say I'm ecstatic about passage of the Urban Forestry Advisory Board. The first members of this board will really affect change in a way that we haven't seen before, cooperating with department heads, with other officials, and really focused on making sure that our tree canopy not only grows, but that we sustain and maintain the trees that we have for generations to come. Mostly so I think that we all here can hug a tree, but also our children and our grandchildren for years to come. I think what we were looking for here was not to just have the advisory board give advice to the department heads and work with them closely on building this canopy, but looking for ways to find funding so that projects like the 75,000 trees can expand and get into all of the neighborhoods throughout Chicago and Chicagoland to make sure that every community has equitable assistance in terms of making sure that their neighborhoods are treated the same way throughout the entire city. I was happy to see the work done to make sure that these appointees are a very diverse group of people. They come from different walks of life throughout the city and Chicagoland. And when you look at the expertise of everybody here, there's well over 100 years of expertise in urban forestry. And I'm happy to see all the people appointed here today accepting this challenge on behalf of all Chicagoans and Chicagoland to make sure that we can build this canopy up again and provide for future generations in the way we haven't before. So I just want to say thank you to the mayor for putting this together, Angela Tovar for all the work you did on it, and working with us. I know it was a little bit of a process, but I'm happy to work with all these people in the future. And when you're asking questions afterwards, these are the people that you should talk to. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to yield the mic to them.
And
that's it.
That's back to you.
All right. Happy to take your questions.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Appreciate it. Members of the media, Alejandra and I will bring down the mic. 2 questions per reporters. We'll kick it off with Damon.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you. I think we all saw your letter to Stacey Davis Gates. The CTU says they were under the impression they too would get the 12 weeks of paid parental leave. What happened? Why did they think that? And also your letter sort of alluded to, they're governed by their collective bargaining agreement. That's something that they need to handle through contract talks. They also seem to think that the CPS board can vote to extend their leave. Is that true?
Well, I'll say a couple things. Number one, I'm the mayor that actually got this done in the city of Chicago, and I'm extraordinarily proud of it. But we had to sit at the table with our unions and make sure that they were fine with it. And that's what we've done with the exception of one union. For whatever reason, the FOP seems to think that providing their young membership with paid parental leave is not something they want to do. But we'll figure that out at the bargaining table. And I think I stood in this very room when it passed City Council, and I was asked, well, what about the sister agencies? And I said at that time, and I say again, it's my hope and expectation that the sister agencies will follow our lead and that they will adopt a similar policy. But of course, each and every one of them has to make sure that this is socialized through the collective bargaining process, and CPS is no different. So I've seen reports that say, oh, the mayor tried to take this down. Nonsense. Oh, it was already on the agenda. That's not my understanding. And what I urged in the letter was to use the collective bargaining process to get this done. That's where the work has got to be done, and I hope that the CTU and CPS will be able to come to some resolution so that CTU members will also be the beneficiaries of this policy.
Just a point of clarification. So then the board, just can't implement this without opening up the CBA?
If we did something again, I'm not the lawyer, plain lawyer here, but we would never do anything without working with unions on doing it. We don't impose from on high. We work with the unions and the collective bargaining agreements, and we respect the collective bargaining agreements. And if we did something other than that, you'd be hearing something different. So I encourage, as I understand it, the president of the CTU meets on a monthly basis with the CEO. She should bring it up in one of those conversations, but also they should just work together to figure this out so it can move forward.
Boy, so much I want to cover with you, but I think my colleague wanted me to ask you, can you share with us anything you know about a group of 30 refugees stuck at a warming center at 10 South Kedzie? Are you aware of this? How is the city helping them?
I'm not aware of that specifically, but yes, we have absolutely opened up our warming centers to make sure that we're supporting the migrants who are asylum seekers who are coming to our city. I've been very clear about this. We are doing everything that we can to really live our values as a welcoming city, but we are tapped out of both space and funding for the services that are necessary to support these migrants who, frankly, are being shipped across the country like freight from states like Texas. I'm not aware of this specific instance, but I know, having visited these centers, that absolutely we're opening up every space that we can think of to make sure that we're supporting the migrants that are coming to our city, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thanks, Mayor. Craig Wall, ABC.
Hello, Mayor.
You giving me a preview about tomorrow night?
Yes, there will be questions, and we'll expect answers.
Excellent. Good to know. Good to know.
Don't tell my boss I gave that away. So let me just go back to the whole CTU thing, because they were here presenting these petitions, and they're rather grieved by all of this. They seem to think that you quashed this,
That's just fundamentally not true. Again, I'm the mayor who said this is a really good idea, that we should get it done, and we got it done for the city. What sense would it make for me to then say, but I want to deny it to every other person outside of the city of Chicago, government proper? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, just think of the logic of the absurdity of that. So that never happened. Listen, they said lots of things. It doesn't make it so. And that absolutely fundamentally never happened. Why would I do that? I want this to be a policy of not only the city of Chicago, but our sister agencies, but it has to be done through the collective bargaining process. They need to get at the table. They need to bring the CPS people along and get it done, because I'm not going to sit here and say I know every nuance of the CTU contract. I don't. But I absolutely support the value, because I got it done here in the city of Chicago.
Sidebar, I have a separate question, but there was a ordinance introduced by Silvana Tabarros today that would extend this same thing to police. Do you support that?
We have been at the bargaining table with the FOP, and they have rejected the adoption of this policy. So you're going to have to ask that leadership as to why they're going to do that. But I do not think it's appropriate ever, and I've been a broken record about this, when we're actively at the collective bargaining table, it is not appropriate for the mayor or the city council to weigh in. That needs to play itself out at the collective bargaining table. And what Alderman Tabarros, I'm sure she was well-intentioned, but to strip the ability of the city and the union to negotiate at the collective bargaining table, that is a slippery slope that we simply cannot go down. She should know better. She should know better. We need to get this done at the collective bargaining table. Almost every other union has adopted this, including, as I understand it, the supervisors union, PPBA. I don't understand the logic here. When you think about the fact that many FOP members are young, they're still in their childbearing years, why not adopt this policy? It makes perfect sense. Why deprive the FOP membership of something that is incredibly important benefit for them? Paid medical leave, paid parental leave. I don't get it, but that's for the collective bargaining table, not for an ordinance in the city council.
All right. Last week I asked you about the white shirts going door to door in that new police policy, giving public safety tips and also taking service requests. Mm-hmm. Ray Lopez is livid today because the commanders in his area, when there was 2 gang-related shootings, are out doing door knocks instead of being on the scene of these 2 gang-related shootings, where a 21-year-old man was shot at a bus stop in front of his brother and his father. Do you still think this is a good idea? And should there be some discretion that commanders can not go do this door knock?
I'm 100% certain if that was the case, the commanders would be there. The detectives are obviously there. The ETs, the evidence technicians are there. So there, of course there's a police response. But yes, do I think it's important for the white shirts to be out in community and learning firsthand what community members need, to talk to them and try to build that relationship with them? That shouldn't be something that's left to the POs. The white shirts absolutely need to be out there, and I support that. And obviously, in the event of an emergency, they're going to respond accordingly.
Greg Pratt, Tribune.
Good afternoon, Mayor. So as far as the migrants go, you had written a letter to the state requesting $54 million more dollars. Where are you in that process, and is the February deadline still looming with a potential shortfall here?
Well, I don't know what you mean about a shortfall.
Well, in terms of, you said we need more money from the state or we're running out. We can't continue to provide the same level of services.
Well, first of all, the legislature provided an appropriation to the city of Chicago as part of the lame duck session. I don't know if you obviously didn't know that. So we work with members of the legislature, including Representative Cassidy and her colleagues, and we got an appropriation that we expect to get relatively shortly to help us with that.
And then after your news conference last week about the CPS situation, the city colleges released a statement saying they had informed your campaign about their ethics policy, that they can't coordinate with campaigns, and they said that they had purged the emails. What was your campaign told by city colleges, and what do you think of the emails being purged?
The city colleges said that they purged them? All right, I don't know. I don't know anything about that, and we have no written record of contact from city colleges. But what I said, and I think I addressed this last week, it's the same issue. It was a mistake for the campaign worker to reach out to the city colleges, just as it was a mistake to reach out to CPS.
Well, you don't have a
Heather Sharon,
record.
WTTW.
What do you know about? Did they call your campaign in August?
As I said, it was a mistake for the. It was a mistake for our campaign worker to reach out. We said that very clearly. I stepped out, and I own that. And I don't have any further information at this time.
Heather Sharon, WTTW.
Hi, Mayor. You said that you wouldn't fire the staffer who was responsible for the emails. Would it be a firing offense if somebody at your campaign got that notification from the city colleges of Chicago saying this violated our ethics policy, and that wasn't passed up the chain of command, leading to another round of emails being sent?
I'm not going to speculate about something that I don't know to be a fact.
Okay. On another topic, hang on, let me pull it up. I want to make sure I get it right. Okay. Will the decision by Chicago police leaders not to fire or discipline an officer who admitted they were a member of the Oath Keepers make it impossible for Chicagoans to trust the Chicago Police Department, given that the Oath Keepers are a far-right anti-government group, according to the FBI, whose leaders were convicted of sedition and other crimes in connection with the January 6th insurrection?
You're talking about an incident that happened in 2010, 19 years before I became mayor. I think CPD is relooking at that issue, but it was resolved and dealt with in 2010 when it first arose.
Craig Dellamore, WBBM.
Hello, Mayor. I'm going to beat the horse about the parental leave one more time. What can you say to people who know that the members of the school board are your appointees, and that if this is something that you want to see happen, they would assume it's going to happen?
Well, you're making a lot of assumptions in the question, so let me just be clear once and for all. Every single sister agency has multiple collective bargaining agreements. We work with organized labor. We don't impose by fiat, and nor could the Board of Education do that. There's got to be a discussion and some agreement on the part of the parties, and then perhaps that matter gets presented to the Board of Education for ratification. But we're nowhere near that yet. The discussion has to be had in the first instance at the collective bargaining table, and that process has not started yet. So I'm urging both sides, and you saw, hopefully, my response to Stacey Davis Gates. I don't sit in and dictate local policy at the sister agencies. If there's a question that comes up and they want my opinion or want us to weigh on it, of course we do. But fundamentally, just as we did at the city, they've got to sit at the collective bargaining table and work it out. That's the way the process works. And when that happens and there's an agreement, presumably it will be ratified by the Board of Education at the appropriate time. But they're not there yet.
And on another topic, you had some words after the meeting with Alderman Curtis. How did that go?
Look, I have good relationships with almost every member of the City Council, including Alderman Curtis. And if you were paying attention, I had a conversation with Alderman Garza as well. You all have a narrative out there about what my personal relationships are with these folks that oftentimes doesn't match reality.
Mary Ann Ahern, NBC.
Mayor, can we ask you about the campaign finance reports now that they're out, and there are those who have said that are looking at this more closely than even I, but they say you're burning through money. Can you show us polling that shows that this is working?
Well, what I will say is this. It's campaign season. We're about 40 days out from an election. Of course we're spending money. We're spending money to be on TV. We're spending money in our field operation. We're spending money on voter engagement. So I'm not one who thinks that the thing to do is just continue to hoard money. We feel very good about where we are. We feel very good about the amount of money that we're raising. We're going to have plenty of money to make sure that we communicate, that we stay up on TV. So that's all I have to say about that.
And could you also elaborate why it seems that Garcia and Vallis are the two challengers that you criticize the most? It seems to indicate that you feel that they are ahead of you in the polls.
No, I wouldn't say that at all.
Alice, Tribune.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I wouldn't say that at all.
Alice?
I think we are in a place where we feel very good about where we are vis-a-vis the other candidates. My challenge and opportunity is to make sure that we continue talking to the voters about what we've done, and that's what we're doing. But of course, it's standard fare to make sure that you're defining the others who want to put a gloss on or spin a narrative that is inconsistent with their track record and reality. So that's what we're doing.
Thanks, Mayor. Alice, Tribune.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi there.
During our editorial board meeting yesterday, Willie Wilson called for closing low-capacity schools after the moratorium.
I'm sorry, he called for what?
Closing low-capacity schools after the moratorium on CPS closures expires in 2025. Alderman Sawyer also said a very difficult conversation needs to be had about those campuses. If you get a second term, will you call for them to definitely stay open, or do you think their future should also be re-examined?
I think I've addressed this several times, but I'll repeat it again. We're obviously aware of what the population is in every school. I think that the opportunity for us is to make sure that every school has a baseline of supports that is uniform across the district, and that's what CEO Martinez and his team have been implementing through their investments in Chicago Public Schools. Look, the reality is this. The closure of the 50 schools, the brutal process that resulted in those closures is still really fresh in the minds of people all across the city who were negatively impacted by those closures and did not believe that the prior administration cared about what their feelings were and the importance of many of these schools as community anchors and important institutions in these neighborhoods. We are never, ever, ever going to do that. Everything we do with CPS, we start with going into the community, engaging with those community members to have a transparent and candid conversation about what they would like to see vis-a-vis these schools. CPS provides them with data, they ask questions, they give feedback. That is the process. So I'm not going to skip ahead years from now on a process that I don't know what the result will be, but what I can tell you is we will never do anything when it comes to an individual school in particular sectors, where we are not deeply engaged with the residents of those communities, first and foremost, to see what their issues and concerns are. That's the only way to right, I think, the wrong that still resonates today of the way in which those 50 schools were closed.
And Inglewood residents have expressed concern over Norfolk Railway's expansion displacing them, as well as contributing to pollution. The most extreme case was a longtime resident suing the company after getting evicted. Have you heard about these concerns in general, and what's your response to them?
I have heard about them in general, and again, the same thing. You got to go into a community, and Norfolk Southern really has to take the lead and responsibility for that, and they have been, to make sure that they're listening to what the concerns of the residents are and coming up with solutions that address those concerns.
That's at WBZ.
Hi, Mayor. The FOP has paid tens of thousands to attorneys to try to kick candidates off the ballot for the newly created police district councils. One of the attorneys said the FOP is trying to push forward candidates they both be fair rather than having an agenda that's anti-police. Do you think it's fair for the FOP to elect its own people to a new board that was created to specifically oversee the police department that the union represents?
Well, the process is open to all. And I think to the extent that the FOP is trying to tip the scales in one direction or another, that's going to be seen directly by the voters, and they will respond accordingly. I trust the voters.
And, you know, on the funding for asylum seekers that the Illinois General Assembly appropriated, that was $20 million to be a grant to the city to cover those costs like shelter, transportation. That's less than half of what you asked for from state lawmakers. Will this satisfy the city's needs for services, or will services have to be cut? And if so, how severe do you think those cuts may be?
Well, again, if you look at the conversation around the $20 million, it was that they're going to give this to us as an initial installment, wait and see what, if any, monies that we get from the federal government, and to give us the opportunity to come back and ask for more. So I'm never going to say no to that kind of money. We could use it, and we will put it to good use in helping support migrants in the city.
Thanks, Mayor. Aaron, Daily Line.
Hi, this is a question about the Smart Streets program. So where will the cameras or recording devices be? How will they record the violations? Will the violations be the same, like the ticket? Will you pay the same amount as if a person saw you violating this? And when will this begin?
Yeah, so I think the 3 or 4 questions in there, so you may have to remind me. So where where the cameras will go. So we'll be looking at locations that will be what we call a fixed post. So that's on the street, on a pole, potentially, facing, for example, a bus lane. And we'll also be looking at cameras potentially on the CTA buses themselves. So as a bus is coming up a bus lane, there's a car parked in it, the camera can then record the violation. Second question was?
Will they be the same? Will it cost the same?
Yes,
will they be the same violations?
Yes, same violation. I think, as you know, the fine was increased recently for violations related to bike lanes, and so we'll be following what's in the municipal code for the fees and fines.
And when will it start?
Well, we'd like to get it up and running as soon as we can, but it has to finish the process through City Council first.
Justin Lawrence.
We're not going to go on a line like that.
Justin Lawrence, Cranes.
Oh, the Urban Forestry Advisory Board, what's the first task? Like, what can we expect to see first? And, I mean, will they meet tomorrow, next month?
The first task, of course, will be having a first convening and working with our Chief Sustainability Officer and other folks in our Office of Environment to really kind of set a course of how they want to engage with the city and all the agencies that are responsible for planting our trees. I think there's a lot of data and information that we need to share with them about what the kind of current state of play is. So getting them up to speed on relevant information and then figuring out what the cadence of communication is going to be is what I anticipate as the first steps.
Great.
Hey, Mayor. At an aldermanic forum last night in the 43rd Ward, Alderman Timmy Knudsen, he declined to endorse you in the mayor's race. He said he's staying out of that. He's obviously supported you in 2019. You've appointed him to 2 positions, including the city council. Are you surprised that he's choosing to stay out of that?
No, it's just something that we discussed. He's got to focus on his race, and I totally understand that.
But does that make you? I mean, does that make you concerned that you have a lot of work to do to win back voters in the North Lakefront and Lincoln Park, especially?
I have a lot of work to do as a candidate running for re-election, and that's what's expected.
That's a wrap, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, Mayor.